This is Orlando Wilson, and I was asked a question earlier this morning reference working armed internationally. The general rule is most close protection jobs are unarmed. Why? Because it's such a difficult process to travel with firearms, even if you legally can carry firearms at the end location. Um, if you think about it, in most countries, the only people that can own firearms are going to be legal citizens or residents of that country, and they have to go through quite a detailed vetting process and a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of paperwork to actually own a firearm. That's not carry a firearm. For security purposes, most places where there are armed security guards, the guards have to be licensed and they have to go through an armed security course. If you think you can just turn up in somebody else's country and carry a firearm because you can, you're dreaming. You're watching too many movies. I know people that said they've carried in various countries. I've worked armed in quite a few countries, but the process is not easy. If you think you're just going to turn up and be given a gun and be able to work legally in the majority of countries, you're dreaming, because it's very difficult for citizens of that country to even own and carry firearms. In the US, guns are, I'm not going to say freely available, but easier to get hold of than most places. It depends on the state you're in whether you can carry or not. I had the Florida concealed weapons permit. I taught the classes. I think when I left, the Florida permit allowed you to carry in 33 other states. But that was for concealed carry, not for security purposes. That was for personal self-defense. Carrying places like New York, New Jersey, California, very, very difficult. So even within the US, you might be licensed to carry in one state. That doesn't mean you're going to be licensed to carry in all states. And again, the firearms you're licensed to carry are generally going to be limited. It's not like the movies where you're going to be running around with AR-15s, etc., etc. That is complete movie BS. Now, if I've flown with guns within the US, and as long as you follow the TSA rules, it's not too bad. Flying with guns internationally, I've never done it. Where I've worked armed, I picked the firearms up. The firearms have been at the other end. I've got from other people, other companies. One thing, and I know people that travel with guns for sporting purposes, a lot of it is a customs and immigration issue. Yeah, I know if you're leaving US with guns, you have to register the guns with customs. That way you can bring them back in. And you're taking the gun out for personal use. You're not exporting that gun. If you're caught exporting a firearm illegally, that is big problems, big problems. So you can take guns out and you can bring them back. You got to ensure that the place you're going to, that the gun is legal to take into that country. And generally the airlines will ensure you have the right paperwork before they even allow the gun on the plane. You turn up in a country with a unlicensed firearm, or a firearm you don't have the paperwork for, it'll just be confiscated. That's it. They won't let you out the airport. If you're caught in a country with an unlicensed firearm, you're going to have big problems. Generally how it works, I know people that's traveled internationally with firearms, again for sporting purposes, they have to get an invitation from a club, and generally those people, well, 100% those people have been going for sporting purposes, be it hunting or sport shooting, not carrying for close protection purposes or self-defense purposes. And again, you got to remember, in most places, if you use a firearm, if you shoot somebody in self-defense, you got big problems, huge problems. And if you're a foreigner and you shoot a local in self-defense, better get to the airport as quickly as possible and get the hell out of that country. I know people would say wait and hang around for the police to turn up. Depends where you are, but that's just my advice. Anyway, as I said, most international close protection jobs are unarmed. So again, that puts an emphasis on you need self-defense skills. You need to be able to improvise weapons, etc., etc. A lot of times working with firearms, I had when I had guys working for me in the US, some of them I was happy when they never had firearms on them, because from a management perspective, you're liable for any stupidity that happens. If you got somebody working for you and they get involved in a shooting, okay, your licenses can be investigated, and again, civilly, you can be liable if the person shoots an innocent bystander. You're going to get sued as much as they are. So I know a lot of people think it's sexy, it's macho to carry firearms. There's a lot of responsibility that goes with it. You're involved in a shooting, you're going to have big problems. If you get away with it criminally, you still can be open up to civil legal proceedings, especially in the US, which can cost you a lot of money. From a company perspective, from a management perspective, if you've got guys working armed, you have to take into consideration all the issues, make sure you got the right insurance, and if things go bad, you can end up being sued for big bucks. So in some ways, you're better off not carrying the firearms in the first place. Guns can get you out of trouble, but they can also get you into a lot more trouble. They're a tool that's to be used as a last resort, absolute last resort. Trouble is, a lot of people think it's the first resort when dealing with an issue. Absolute last resort, and guns should be used as necessary. I remember doing jobs. I remember one job just come to mind. We were looking after a couple of kids in the US. The father had the custody of the kids. The mother had mental issues, needed help, and she was stalking the kids, trying to get the kids, etc., etc., etc. Domestic issues. I had one guy armed, one guy unarmed with those kids. Everybody knew we were carrying. Well, everybody knew the one guy that was carrying. And the unarmed guy, his job would be purely to try to defuse the situation. By trying to defuse the situation, an absolute last resort would have been if the woman came at him with a firearm, then the armed guy would have dealt with it. But our main goal in that situation was not a confrontation. The woman had mental health issues. So I know cops in the US like to shoot mentally ill people, but I don't think it's really a positive. So our main thing with that situation was one guy had a firearm for an absolute last resort. Get the kids to safety and de-escalate, de-escalate, de-escalate. The firearm was to be used as an absolute last resort. And I generally hired sensible guys that knew that. And I don't think either of the guys would have felt too good about executing a mentally ill mother in front of their children. So I hope that puts things in perspective. So there's a lot you need to take into consideration if you're providing armed security, close protection services. And again, I would say there's the moral issues and there's also the liability issues. So I hope that makes sense. Anyway, I've got an array of books online specifically to do with close protection. 3 books to do with close protection are up on Amazon, and various books to do with various aspects of the security and security topics, etc. I'm also throwing up a lot more of these videos that's going to be answering more questions to do with close protection, kidnap and ransom, and international security. So I hope this video gives you a few things to think about. Be good, stay out of trouble, and remember, guns can get you out of trouble, but they can get you into a hell of a lot more trouble.